Obviously, playing a team that's playing really, really good basketball right now in Wisconsin. They're in a tremendous rhythm offensively and defensively. Well-coached team, disciplined, older as you'd expect with Wisconsin. You know, a disciplined, well-coached, older team, and that's certainly what they have with a number of guys that have either been in their system or kind of paid their dues in their system, and now whether it's Reavers or who King, a number of guys who are just kind of step. Trice has played terrific. Davison. So it's a great test for us, great challenge for us. Obviously, they played exceptionally on the road last time out against Tennessee, their last road game. Big Ten plays here, so we need good preparation today.
Chris, how's Kyle Young doing?
Yeah, I meant to mention that. So Kyle will be out tomorrow. He is, kind of game to game at this point, but he's going to be ruled out for tomorrow's game. He's recovering well. In these kind of things, it's always next man up. I say that also recognizing the value that Kyle brings to this team, which is significant. I don't want to minimize that at all. He's certainly been played as one of our. He's had as good a junior year as anybody's had. So,
is it appendicitis? Is it the flu? What is he dealing with?
No, he had his appendix removed. So, he's dealing with that, and it's something that bothered him a little bit in the past, but the timing on that is always a difficult one. We initially thought it was stomach issues, and he literally, he had some stomach issues. It was right before tip, so it wasn't anything that happened like earlier in the day when Doc could have looked at it. It was literally like 10 minutes before tip is when he started to feel some issues, and it was alerted to my attention. And I wasn't sure if he could go. He saw Doc. Kyle wanted to go. Doc said it was fine for him to go. And then after the game is when they deemed it was potentially an appendix issue.
Yeah, so like you said, you try next man up. It's hard to replace what he provides you. Yeah. Is this a big opportunity for EJ? Alonzo? How do you try to make up for what Kyle provides for you?
I think Justin. I think Justin will certainly see an opportunity, whether that's at the wing or the forward, or moving Andre around from the wing or the forward spot. We're dealing with being a little bit banged up right now. I don't want to get specifics, but I will with one. Zoe was out with a flu situation this week. So and a couple other guys that are dealing with some limitations right now. So, it's not an ideal time for this to happen, but we'll have other guys that'll be ready to go and have a great opportunity.
On that injury front, any news with Musa? Is he going to come back anytime soon?
Yeah, I don't think that he's certainly not ready to come back at this point right now. And as I said last week, I just think, Tim, that's probably trending towards, continues to trend towards a redshirt situation. I think, could it potentially change if he was, he just now has started to get to a little bit of contact in practice, but I don't know that he feels confident enough to be able to play on his ankle yet.
Do you look at any silver linings, though? I mean, you never want to have guys get hurt. Clearly, a guy like Kyle, you mentioned, he's important, but you've probably had teams as a head coach, even last year's team, where you lose a guy or two and you're in serious trouble. Like with the freshman class being here, you've got some depth.
Yeah.
You could look at this for opportunities for other guys.
We definitely have more depth than we had last year. And, when we lost Kyle for that stretch, it hurt us last year. And then obviously when we lost Caleb for that stretch, it was a significant blow to us. We do have more depth and more balance this year. And I'm interested to kind of see how we respond to losing a guy like Kyle who does so much for your team offensively and defensively. And, one of our concerns going into the season was depth behind Caleb. So that's, that was kind of one of our overlying, hey, this is a concern, depth behind Caleb. So I'm just anxious to see how we respond with some guys stepping into. I mean, EJ's already played a significant role. I think it'll be even more so moving forward. So we'll see how we respond against a team where you have to be really committed, have a great understanding of how you're going to play. A team like Wisconsin really tests that with you. So we'll see.
Going back to the West Virginia game, you guys have played 13 games. Many of them you've played outstanding, just tremendous basketball. The second half of that game seemed so uncharacteristic for your team. I think 5 field goals and 10 or 12 turnovers, and I don't know, just a lot of things, breakdowns on defense, just a lot of things that weren't on your tape any of the previous games. Just when you went back and looked at that second half, what were the things you identified, and what are the things you've tried to correct, I guess, in the week since then?
I think the biggest thing is we just, I did not think we played as poised or as smart as we needed to. I think that was the overriding thing for me. And then as I talked to the team, I thought we were, just a little too kind of concerned about our own stuff in that game. And that sometimes happens with young teams, where you're in an environment that there's a lot of emotion, and things don't go your way. You're not playing well, and we just weren't collectively as engaged throughout the game as we needed to be. But give West Virginia credit. But the biggest issues were poise and the intelligence in which we need to play with was not there. And that's the responsibility on coaches and players to improve in that area.
Not to rehash why Micah Potter left, but just you guys are going up against Micah Potter playing for Wisconsin now. Just your thought about that. And his appeal seemed to be denied back in October for him to be able to play in the first semester. Was this a case? Were they still looking for you guys to go to bat for them even that late in the process? Did Coach Gard or you ever talk about this to try and help him get eligible? What was kind of the byplay of that, even in this last 6 months, to try and help him get to where he needed to be?
Yeah, we wrote a letter. Gene Smith wrote a letter on his behalf. I wrote a letter on his behalf. You'd have to speak to them to ask if they wanted us to do more. But our letter was very specific about not only supporting his eligibility for the full year, but wanting that for him. We made there was no confusion in how we felt about that from Gene's perspective or my perspective. I believe Thad even wrote a letter. So we were as adamant as we could be. That decision was out of our hands. Mike is a really good kid, and we wish him well.
When Kyle is out and someone like EJ who's played a good amount thus far, but he still at least had a veteran sort of in front of him to follow. When the veteran goes out, how does that sort of change a freshman's mindset development in their first year in the middle of it?
You talking about EJ? I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I think it's a situation where he's probably looking at it and saying, I'm excited about this opportunity. In some ways, you want a kid to look at it with that perspective. He also probably doesn't quite know what's about to hit him with the amount of attention to detail that you have to play and the level of effort you have to play in a league game. I think he's learning that, as all of our freshmen are, and they're doing a great job kind of embracing that. But it's hard for a freshman. You're going against really good players who are going to challenge you, and I think that's been eye-opening, as it is for every freshman.
You'd mentioned Justin as someone who also could have somewhat of an increased role. I just wonder when he goes in the game, and he's such a good shooter, that do you have to force yourself to try to get him shots at time?
No, he's done a good job kind of being aware of his opportunities and staying aggressive. Really, I think he does a pretty good job of, at least he has, of kind of, not coming in and just jacking shots up, and yet at the same time being aggressive. He was a little bit antsy, his first part of his freshman year, but I've been really pleased when he's been in there. Obviously, his injury has affected him in terms of his overall play in this year, but I think he's come in with the right mindset. I do. Well, if he turns one down, we're going to be on him.
Chris, in the NBA, NHL, there's a saying, you don't know what you have through 30 games.
Yeah.
What is it in college basketball? Is it now? Is this a continuation of do you see the sort of the calendar flip is maybe that, or is there generally a?
I'd say the way that I look at it, Rob, is probably the if you get to 10 to 15 games of light competition, I think that's when you generally get a pretty good gauge on where your team's at. You get to 15 of those games against similar competition, so you're at that point you're into mid-January or so. I think at that point you usually get a pretty good gauge on at least kind of where you're at, and I don't know if you ever know for sure what your ceiling, or your basement is for that matter. But I think you learn a whole lot more when you're 10 to 15 games in against relative competition.
And this is an odd place because all the eyes were sort of on football and you.
Yeah,
now they're
sure.
all on you.
Sure.
For those who haven't been paying a lot of attention, who are you guys? Where do you need to improve? If you had to sort of
we're a young group that's got some older guys that have kind of led the way here. I think it's an exciting group to watch and follow because of the blend of old and young guys and the transformation in Caleb's body and some of the young guys that have been exciting to watch and see develop and grow. And the feedback I've gotten from people that I see along the way have just said they've typically really enjoyed watching this team play. Now, probably that's because we've had some exciting wins and a couple tough losses, but some exciting wins. I think it's an enjoyable group. Listen, we've got to earn the right to get to wherever we get to, and I think the biggest thing for us is just, there is nothing more important than today when you're a basketball coach or when you're a player or when you're an athlete for that matter. There's nothing more important than today. And today is what's in front of us, and maximizing that is what's most important. And that's what we're trying to focus on.
Last thing, I don't know if you pay attention to sellouts and crowd sizes, but you've got to be pretty pleased with what's happening and what's going to be coming up here.
Really, it's tremendous. It's the first time we've been here as a coaching staff where we've had this number of sellouts. I believe 5 of the last 9 right now are sellouts. The other ones are limited tickets. Now we want everybody to show up, that's for sure. But never since we've been here as a coaching staff, and we've had some good teams and some great crowds and some energetic crowds. And I think that's the biggest thing you're looking for is a crowd that brings tremendous energy. But I love it. I think our players appreciate it, and we hope that we can earn the right for that to continue and to grow even more with these last remaining games that aren't sold out. But it's tremendous.
Chris, when you set up your non-conference schedule, how much of your thought process on that was building toward this where you've sold out 5 of 9?
Well, I don't know that I had sellouts specifically in mind, but I do think that, and I don't follow all of how ticket sales work because it's not my job, and it's not my job to there are other things that are more important, and my athletic directors, made that clear, right? It's other people's job. I think in many ways, when you look at it, people are going to follow. If your team has some energy around it, whether that's in expectations or in performance, early season. Certainly, we've had some early season wins that have been maybe, I don't know if it's eye-opening, but certainly have caught the eye of maybe the casual fan. And then I think when you have some guys, like I said, Caleb, who's lost weight and kind of transformed his body, and young players, a combination of winning that brings some excitement. Now, again, we've got to do our part to continue to perform well.
To see Kyle, who was really homesick his first year, now to be actually sick this year, to see him handle all that he's been through and to still be the kind of guy he is, what does that mean to you as not only a coach, but as a guy who clearly cares about Kyle? Yeah,
tremendous maturity on Kyle's part over the years. I've said openly how homesick he was, and wanted just to kind of go back home and, get a job. And what a mistake that would have been for him. And that was pretty short-lived, but it was, for most of his summer. He's frustrated, I think, with the fact that he's missed some games the last couple years here. And I think this timing of this really, really frustrates him. He wants nothing more than to be out there, but, it happens. So.
You were talking on your radio show about the turnovers you've had, and you said this before, when that number gets up, you just sort of look at who has the ball, and maybe you need to change some things around. Dwayne has the ball an awful lot, and his turnover percentage is low.
Yeah.
And you have two guys who log a lot of point guard minutes who's up over 20% in turnover percentage. Do you look at letting Dwayne play the one a little more, or putting the ball in his hands even more than you have because that percentage is so low? Yeah,
we do. We have looked at that. The turnovers have been fairly spread out, but we've had Caleb has had more than I'd like. Andre's had more, at least had more in a couple games than I'd like. And then obviously our point guards have had some games where they've had it a lot. So I do think it's something that we're looking at. We're trying to evaluate, but at the same time, we've got to do a good job of getting those guys better in that particular area. And I don't think it's, we're going to pull the ball out of our point guard's hands. But does it mean that we could involve Dwayne in some actions potentially more? It's possible, sure.
How much do you talk with guys about, it just seems like sometimes, and this is across the board, I suppose, somebody will put the ball on the floor and go toward the rim, but they don't really seem to have a plan for when they're going toward the rim, and they'll get themselves caught in a bad position, and then that's how turnovers happen. Like, how much do you talk with your guys just about being smart in a way and trying to think of what you're going to do before you start making your move to go toward the rim?
Yeah, I think that, it's something we try to break down in film on a regular basis. Now, part of how West Virginia plays is that way, right? We know that. But, I think, again, it's something we've tried to really break down in film and show guys. And then if they can't understand it, then that's when it's, hey, listen, we've got to take the ball out of their hands, which is in some ways what we did last year towards the end of the season. As we went through the last part of the season, we kept it in a couple guys' hands for most of the latter part of the season.
When you're talking about that stuff, how much of it too is not just on the guy who actually has a ball in his hands, but the guys around him, finding space to be able to make themselves available for a pass?
Yeah, I think our spacing can improve offensively, but we've had passing turnovers through post feeds. We've had turnovers in transition. We've had sloppy ball handling turnovers. So it's not really been confined to one specific area. If it was, I think it'd be easier to fix. I think it's going to be an ongoing process with this group.
Similar to Rob's question about non-conference being over, I'm just curious where you stand in terms of what your expectations were coming into this season. Do you feel like you guys have lived up to what you expected? Are you ahead, behind? And I'm just now that you've played some some decent opponents. And
yeah, sure. I think I can just speak to the non-conference portion because we're, 1-1 in Big Ten play and got the rest of the season. But the non-conference, given how we lost one non-conference game, certainly you, as a group you feel really good about that given our schedule. Really good. I think we should feel good about that as a group. I think our players do feel good. They understand it's a whole different animal moving into league play. I think we've performed well in the non-conference. We really did, and that's a credit to really our players. Now, is Carolina the same Carolina that they've been? No. Villanova is a good team. We performed really well against them. The Kentucky win was a really good win. Winning some of the games like a Kent State where it was tied with 10 minutes to go was good. But, you try as a coach not to really assess anything because what we're really trying to assess is what's our growth as we move along. That's really the only thing that matters for us. But we certainly feel good about our non-conference, for sure.
You said earlier that for athletes, the most important thing is to realize there's nothing more important than today.
Yeah.
You've spoken at length about how you have a young team. Can a young team grasp that?
I think it's got to be stated over and over and over by myself and our leadership, and they've got to commit themselves to it. And they can't be they've got to play with great emotion, but they cannot be too emotional. I think there's a balance there. There's a perspective that's required. And we want to be a different team here in a month. And the only way that happens is if today's really, really, really dang important. And whatever else happens, we'll figure it out. But that's got to be really important to us.
And with Justin coming back from the injury, where is he as far as, you've said even when he got back at the beginning of the season, he wasn't where he needed to be just from physically and just defensively and things like that. Yeah. Where is he in that progression of getting back to some of the things he could do at the end of last season that physically he couldn't do when this year started?
I think he's getting there. He's getting closer. I don't know what percentage he'd put himself at. I think a month ago he was saying maybe he was 65, 70%. I think he's getting closer to where he needs to get to. He's put on some weight back, but and he's practiced well, and his attitude has been really good. He's been really, really engaged, and I just think when a kid's really engaged on the bench and he's not playing, sooner or later that's gonna, and he practices well, that's gonna pay off. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Lettermen Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.